You're listening to or watching the QC Step Podcast, a podcast to give you the information and the skills that you need to find a job, keep that job, and become a successful employee. My name is Corey Finneran, and welcome to the 29th episode of the QC Step Podcast. On this episode, I'm going to talk with you about explaining unemployment or gaps in work history on an application or a resume. But before I do that, let's take a look at this week's job leads. I post job leads on QCstep.com every Monday morning. There's quite a few job leads this week, and there's links to the online applications for every one of the leads. So we'll start off with Hy-Vee Stores. The store in Moline on Avenue of the Cities, they're looking for courtesy clerks. The Rock Island store is hiring courtesy clerks and kitchen helpers. The Muscatine store is hiring courtesy clerks. And both Galesburg stores are hiring courtesy clerks. Again, there is a link to the online application. You can click on that link to apply for any of these positions with any of these stores. We'll look at some other leads here. The Burlington Coat Factory in Bettendorf. Culver's in Geneseo. Domino's is hiring all locations. They're looking for delivery drivers, and I think you have to be 18 for those positions, but some of you seniors are turning 18 now. The PetSmart in Davenport, they're hiring pet bathers and stalkers. And Maurice's at North Park Mall, they're hiring sales associates. And CVS in Moline is hiring clerks/cashiers. So because it's a cashier position, you would need to be comfortable with running a cash register and have the skills to do that. And then there's a few job leads here that are specifically for seniors that are 18. Kraft Foods is looking for summer laborers. That's a temporary position. And Dollar General is looking for sales associates, and you have to be 18 and graduating. So with both these leads, Kraft Foods and Dollar General, you can apply for those, and then when you follow up on that application, you can give them your graduation date and kind of tell them that you're available to work, full time once you've graduated. So ever since we started doing QCstep.com and the QC Step podcast, I've talked about how you can connect with us on Facebook and Twitter, and I haven't been completely sure of how I want to use our social media accounts other than sharing job leads. So recently, what I've kind of decided that I'm going to do is, in addition to sharing job leads, I'm also going to share articles, blog posts, videos, anything else that I think involve work and employment that you might be interested in. So last week I shared a couple articles. One of them was on how job searches for teenagers can be tough, and another one was on how to explain gaps in your employment history and unemployment on an application or resume. So I'm going to go over that article this week, and if you'd like to see articles when I post them, then you can like us on Facebook and Twitter. It's facebook.com/QCstep and twitter.com/QCstep. So in this article we're going to look at today, it explains how you would explain unemployment or gaps in employment on an application or resume. And gaps in employment can kind of raise a red flag with potential employers on the applications, because if you don't have a good explanation, it could hurt your chances with being hired. So here are the tips that the article gives to explain unemployment or gaps in employment. Number one, list only years. So don't include the month when you're filling out an application or you're writing your resume. So you would say that you worked somewhere from 2011 to 2012, and then your next job would be 2012 to current or something like that. So let's say there was 6 months of a gap in between those two jobs. Because they both say 2012, it looks like there wasn't a gap, that you left one job for another. Writing it in years, it can make it easier for the reader to see the length of time that you stayed at each job. And it really does just kind of hide gaps in employment history that happen within the same calendar year. Number two, explain the gap if you have a period of unemployment that is larger. you are all students, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that you took time off of work to focus on your schoolwork or participating in extracurricular activities. And what is really great is if during that gap when you weren't working and maybe you were focusing on school, if you had done some sort of volunteer work. And again, I'm sure that if you've been listening or watching these podcasts every week, you'll know that we talk about volunteer work quite a bit, because that is a great way to get some work experience in between real paid jobs. Number 3, if you have gaps in your work history, especially larger gaps that can be explained, put that as work experience. An example would be, let's say you had taken time off of work to focus on school. Then in your employment history, write in full-time student. So maybe, let's say you took a year off, 2011, or let's say you worked a job until the summer of 2011, and then in the fall of 2011 to the summer of 2012, you didn't work. Well, you could write 2011 to 2012 full-time student, and then maybe put if you were involved with any clubs, if you played any sports, if you maybe were on the honor roll, or had some sort of recognition, something like that. So by doing something like that, you're turning your school work and what you've done there into work history. And so that would be a really easy way to fill a gap in employment history. So those are just a few tips in explaining gaps in employment history. If you feel that these solutions won't work for you because of a different situation, or if you want more advice on this, you can speak with Gary or Cari when they're in your schools, or you can email me, info@qcstep.com, or you can fill out the contact forms that are on the website, and I will have them get in contact with you. So again, if you would like to see articles or blog posts or videos on employment like the one that we went through today, you can like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. And some of them won't apply to you, but my goal is to post maybe 3 or 4 a week. And so if I'm doing that, I'm going to try to cover as many different areas of employment as possible. And so some of them will surely apply to you in your situation. On next week's episode, I'm going to sit down and do an interview with Susan Sacco. And some of you may know Susan. She is the Disability Services Coordinator at Blackhawk College. And I'm going to talk with her about the timeline of when if you're interested in going to Blackhawk College, when you need to apply, when you need to have your FAFSA done, when you need to do your Compass test and register and all that kind of stuff. And then she's also going to talk about what kind of accommodations you can receive at Blackhawk College and how they might differ from the accommodations that you receive in high school. So thank you for listening and watching, and we will be back next week with another episode of the QC Step Podcast.